Hey, what's happening? This is Nick Brown from the band Mona, and you are listening to Recess with Spinelli.
You are tuned into Recess with Spinelli here on WSPN, Saratoga Springs, New York, Hoxton FM, London, England, the International Radio Festival, and the New York State Music Blog. And today we are here with Nick of Mona out of Nashville, Tennessee. We are here in Albany, New York at the Hollow Bar and Kitchen. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So I understand this is part of a North American tour, US and Canada, and you're touring with July Talk. You just came from Canada, right?
Yes, we did all over. You don't realize how big it is until you make those drives, and then tonight in Albany you'll start off the USA part of the tour. I really liked Victoria on Vancouver Island. You have to take a ferry to get there, and it's just more chill. Vancouver's a great city. You have the cities that they're all, and big cities are all very similar in a way that's a melting pot. But the thing with Victoria was like it's this island town, and was just so chill and peaceful. It was like almost, I don't know how to describe it. So that was cool. There's like just a peaceful vibe, which is when you're on tour, I think you're probably looking for that more than the big. We see plenty of the big city. We see plenty wild nights. So I think kind of seeing, it's a ferry ride in where there's like bald eagles and orca whales, and like it's so it's a bit majestic. So that was a pretty awesome experience.
Does it put you like in a more relaxed mood to play the show?
I think it takes your mind out of what you're doing a little bit and makes you realize that what you're doing is just part. It's a small part of a much bigger thing. There's always a lot more going on than you. And it's great to be reminded of that,
Speaking of more things going on than you, I understood you spent about 24 hours in airports just trying to get here?
Yeah, I had some flights canceled yesterday, and ended up having, 6 flights, some of them canceled, some of them delayed, and 2 airlines, and about 24 hours later, I made it.
Do you find that part of tour life is just something you have to accept? Is it something that happens on a regular basis, or is it pretty infrequent as far as flight cancellations and things like that?
It's weird because when I used to worry about it all the time, and it never happened, and I think I kind of got like, hey man, relax. And then once I started relaxing, it just started happening more often. So I don't know what the karma is there, or the lesson to learn is there, but it's a part of life. And I think, with anything, you can't get riled up. And even today, as stressful as it was, and, I'm letting the promoter and my manager and tour manager and band know that we might even have to cancel the show. And everyone's, it was, I saw these 2 dogs that had just got off of baggage claim, and their brother and sister, and the owner let them out of the cage, and they jumped up on each other literally, and as much as dogs can on their hind legs, hugged. And I just stood there like with a smile on my face, like, all right, whatever's going on in their world is much more important than mine. Like there was just this like, kind of this beautiful moment. So at that point, I wasn't stressed. I was just kind of, in somebody else's story for a second.
It's like if you're having a really bad day and you have to go and do a show, I mean, there's always that theater proverb, which is, the show must go on, right? So how does that work with music? How do you keep your mind in the game, in focus, to make sure the audience is still having a good time, even if you can't or not?
For me personally, I'm not much of a performance, I'm not a character, I'm more of an emotionalist, so I can channel excitement into just excitement. I can also channel anger into excitement, or frustration into excitement, or pure just like sick and tired into excitement. So if I have energy of any sort, I'm pretty good at kind of pointing it in the direction that I want. Like, luckily I'm not like playing a character on Broadway or like an actor, because if I had to be a certain specific thing, I'd probably get fired. I always say I don't care what you feel as long as you feel something, and I think that I use that and apply that as much to myself, and I know the band does as well, where it's like whatever we're feeling, let's call it a different name. So if you're exhausted, let's turn that into, let's give it a new name, let's point it in a different direction. So I think it's for us, it's about kind of harnessing the emotion. We're not here to preach. We don't have a specific message, so there's not really bullet points that we have to hit every night, or there's not something that we're trying to, we're not a political band, we're not a religious band. So it's really more like, hey, are you human? Are you alive? All right, well, you're in the right place, and let's go from there. And that's always a good starting point. No matter if there's, we've played to 90,000 people, we've played to 9 people, and that energy doesn't change because there's this beautiful word called humans, and as long as there's humans around, I think we can muster up the right emotions. Now, rehearsals, when there's no other humans around, that's another story.
So how do you harness that energy for rehearsals then?
Sometimes you just go eat, man. Sometimes you call it a day and go eat. We try not to force anything. It's leading us as we lead it type thing. And music is a bigger thing than the musician. So sometimes I feel like when you get in this overly disciplined, overly serious kind of mindset of trying to make something happen, you're doing the opposite and kind of just reassuring that there can be no spark. And I think for me and with Mona, we're always kind of looking for that flicker that we can throw some gasoline on. And if you come around breathing too heavy, you just blow it out.
Does that also play into, I guess, what the pseudo break of the band for about 2 years was? just taking a breather for a bit?
Yeah, we did a pretty insane ride. In 2010 going into 2011, we had all this hype in the UK. We got the big record deal, the big publishing deal, the major labels, all that kind of stuff. And UK and Europe, within 6 months, we went from playing very small clubs to theaters, and we had a lot of pressure and a lot of I think that first year, I think we toured like 17 months straight, where we went everywhere from Japan, Australia, north, south, everywhere. We went everywhere. It's not that you fall out of love with what you're doing, but sometimes I think you maybe forget why you're doing what you're doing, and you need a reminder. So we did 2 albums on that label, and it was great. I'm not complaining by any means. I'm grateful for the experience, but I think as we were revisiting, we wanted to know what kind of situation we wanted to get ourselves into again. Before, you're just like young and you just want anything. You just want to be active. With this, our eyes weren't as wide open. Like we were a little smarter and a little choosier about the people we let in our lives. And we have a new manager, new label, new booking agent in the United States. And it's led more. You'll notice I use the word humanity or human a lot, and it's led by people that we like and vision that resonates and stuff like that. So that doesn't just happen overnight, or just the fact that you decide something doesn't mean that it just instantly happens. Sometimes that's time, and sometimes I think I met with like 9 different managers before we actually chose ours.
And this actually kind of reminds me of another conversation I had with the band. I think it may have been Quiet Talk, when one of the bandmates was actually thinking about quitting, and then the moment when he realized he could quit was the moment he realized he could take control of the situation, and rejuvenized him to make music. So is that pretty much what it is? Just learning that you can step away if you wanted to, and learning what you can take control of? Nowadays,
art is a bit of a myth and a bit of a lie in a lot of ways. You have Instagram, you have Pro Tools, you have Photoshop, and instantly people can have finished products. So now everyone's calling themselves everything. So you have to define yourself personally by what is your not that there's some like grandiose messianic thing that goes along with doing art, but there should be some type of genuine thing, to interpret or express or to but we're in a flooded market, we're in a flooded society, we're in a flooded culture. So I think people that have been, we've been touring, now going on 6-7 years since we've had a record deal, not counting since before that. Trust me, you ask yourself several times why you're doing what you're doing. And I think, once you realize that, you have control, and if you love what you're doing and you're affecting people, and the power is yours, so all these like kind of worries or stresses kind of disappear because you could end it all. There's a lot of artistic suicide that probably needed to happen. Some stuff is just garbage, but there's also artistic suicide in the way of it's shedding a skin, like a snake skin or caterpillar to butterfly type thing, where that version of you is dead, and and sometimes you have to sacrifice to get to the next thing. We lost a member who went through, like the example that you're using, thought that, and then thought, I really actually do want to leave. So that's a whole nother version of it, where you go, okay, well, what is he without the band, but what is the band without him? And there's this identity thing, kind of, once again, like a relationship when people are dating and you've been all the restaurants, all the movies you've seen together. Well, now what do you do on a Friday night? Now that you're single. So there's always those evolutions with art. The ironic thing is that it's just, a song can change the world, but simultaneously it's just a bunch of people making noise. So Bob Marley, John Lennon, they were all right, but at the end of the day, it's also relax. It's just noise. So what you do with it is really the powerful thing.
So in a market that is potentially saturated with music to the point where it might be a little bit difficult to find certain bands, to use an analogy, advertisers feel the same often with commercials, right? It's an oversaturated market, so they have to find a way to reach through to your consumer. So would you say you're the company, if you will, the band that's constantly reaching out to an audience, trying to pull them in, or are you the one that just kind of stays there and has them come to you?
Oh, I mean, the EP is called In the Middle for a reason. I think it's a bit of both. If your entire effort goes into just trying to win people over with no kind of discerning reason or rhyme to it, well, then you're just you're McDonald's, and you don't really care about. You're not feeding people. You're just letting people eat, and there's a difference. Consuming things does not mean that it's nourishment, but you also don't want to be so elitist or snobby or artistically self-important that you're just this thing that is hard to discover. Like, I think accessible is a good word. It's definitely a balance. I mean, because you can't get in your head too much. Like I said, it's not that serious. It's it's just rock and roll. But look what the Beatles did with just rock and roll. Look what a lot of bands today do with just rock and roll. I mean, music is still the most powerful thing that humans have, in my opinion. So it's kind of like taking a casual walk through Central Park with a atom bomb in your backpack. Enjoy the walk, but know you could do some damage if you really thought about it.
So now this EP just recently came out. Will there be an album coming out soon after, or is that well off into the future at the moment?
We already have an album, completely different songs. It's not going to be a crossover, a continuation of the EP. It's a complete different body of work. So the EP is 6 songs. We already have a 10, 11 song album that's in the can. It's more of like an introduction to a band that, like, when you take a 2-year break now, like to some people that's a decade. So it's people consume things so fast now that we didn't just want to kind of just dump out a bunch of work and then it go unseen. So an EP made the most sense to kind of let people that were back in action and
An appetizer?
Yeah, a little bit of an appetizer. So
Do we have a release date potentially for the new album?
Not at all, not yet. I mean, the single, the EP just came out, the 28th of October, and the single is on the radio now, but I know the proper push isn't until 2017 anyway. So, we'll see how it goes, and we're jumping overseas and then back again, and we're going to be on the road well into March, April already, let alone what happens with festivals or other things that pop up. So we'll see how it does before we want people to be able to kind of enjoy it and let it have its own legs before just kind of chopping it off. And I think sometimes people need being balanced and being in the middle. Some people release things too fast where they don't let their previous works grow to maybe the potential they could, but on the other hand, sometimes you wait too long and people stop caring. So it's we definitely want to be the balance of that.
All right, well, it sounds like it's starting to get kind of loud. Anything else you want to add? Any final thoughts about anything you want to say?
All good, man. Thanks for chatting with me.
Thanks for joining me today. You have been listening to Recess with Spinelli here on WSPN, Saratoga, Hoxton FM, London, England, the International Radio Festival, and the New York State Music Blog. We have been speaking with Nick of Mona. They're out of Nashville, Tennessee, and they have their new EP, In the Middle, out and available now.